All right, let's not do it sequentially. So this is going to be a pretty great session. I wish we had 40 minutes or 80 minutes. And I want to bring up Ryan Smith, CEO of Qualtrics, and a lot of interesting things about Qualtrics. It's probably one of the hottest unicorns you may not know everything about, and Ryan will tell us a bit about it. We'll learn about how a company was founded, I think, in 2002. So we'll learn about a long journey. We'll learn about how his customer base has changed, how selling's changed, and about building a company outside of this place called the Bay Area, where everyone has to go to build a unicorn. So we've got about 3 hours of stuff that I want to learn about, and we're going to compress it into 29 minutes and 27 seconds. So let's give it up for Ryan and dig in. So I want to talk about a lot, and I want you to tell us about Qualtrics. A quick question: when you go to your biggest customers, you wear a hat? Always. Okay. The big 7-figure deals.
Yeah. Why not?
No, each for yourself. Right?
Well, that's what I wear at home. If I want to wear a hat, I don't want any logos but my own on it, right?
Yeah, I like it. So I want to talk about a lot of stuff, but you know, a lot of folks in the room will know of Qualtrics, and it's a huge success. But it's not a consumer brand like Dropbox or something. So tell us a little bit about the company, when you got started, how many employees you have today, where they're distributed, that kind of stuff.
So cool. First, thanks for having me. This is great. It worked out well. I was in the city. So Qualtrics is something we started when I was a junior in college. I was in the basement of my parents' house, and we stayed there for 5 years. And we started, our goal was to make sophisticated research simple. So my father's an academic scientist, he's a professor, and he was always fiddling around with technology. And we said, hey, look, could we develop a technology for research with like a survey-based platform that we could launch to the world of academia? And he said, cool, let's go do this. I'll partner with you. I have no money to pay you, but no venture capital. So that's the only role. So we stayed in the base.
Dad have started on venture capital, or
yeah, he had a little bit in the past, being an academic, and you know they're great folks, but they think a little differently about the world. So it was great. We targeted the academic world. We signed up 250 universities to start with, and we thought, hey, if we got every business school in the country using Qualtrics, then maybe the faculty would share with their students, and hopefully someday that would carry on out into the corporate and the enterprise. What we didn't know at the time was that would actually be like the entire go-to-market model for Qualtrics. Because you can't really predict virality, but it actually started happening. So someone would leave Kellogg and go use this at Heineken, and this model kind of went. How many anybody use Qualtrics at the university? Yeah, you see hands up. So that's a great model. And then in about 2007, 2008, the downturn of the economy, as a bootstrap company, we were based on making $100,000 a month. And my
how many employees do you have?
We had about 25 people.
25 all on Dad's base.
Yeah.
So
he didn't think we should move out, but we.
So you're doing a millionaire.
Yeah. And we were profitable. It was great because we kind of had to be profitable from the beginning, even when you kill, which is very popular right now. But we moved. He took a Fulbright from Lavova, and he was a Fulbright scholar and was teaching. And so the second he left, I just moved out of the basement and said, we're going to scale this thing. And when he gets back in 18 months, it's either going to be good. And then the downturn of the economy happened, and our business took off. People in the enterprise who we've been calling into, I remember calling into one major airline, and they were like, hey, we said, hey, you got to power all your customer feedback on Qualtrics. And they're like, if our customers are unhappy, they'll just call us. Yeah. And 3 years later, they're actually powering all their feedback on Qualtrics. So the data-driven decision-making took off once people started not being right with everything they were doing. I feel like we're kind of in that spot right now where it's all high fives and chest bumps, and soon people are going to realize, hey, you've got only a limited number of bets, and you better be right. So our business becomes very, very powerful there. So right now, if you look at Qualtrics, we've transitioned to the enterprise. We have 8,000 brands on Qualtrics. We power the feedback for all of healthcare.gov. Customer experience is a big piece of what we do, plus general research. So it's pretty cool. It's kind of evolved in a slow, long, 12-year overnight success right now.
And then of the world, how many employees worldwide today?
We have 1,000 employees worldwide, and we had 500 last year.
So doubled. And of those, how many are in Greater Utah?
We have probably about half, a little bit more than half.
So I want to talk about that more. But an interesting thing from the story, a lot of folks, these are the best of times, aren't they? At least in our careers.
You've got a pulse, you've got money.
Hasn't been better. So, but folks like you and I have been through 08 and 09. And one of the interesting lessons was anyone that pulled back in 08 and 09 that had something actually made a mistake, right? For all different reasons. And so, how do you think about that today? Things can never, at some point the NASDAQ cannot go up infinitely high, right? If folks are worried, if they're worried they sell only the technology, if they're worried that they have a nice to have and not a solution, is this something, if you have enough cash runway, you should even worry about, do you think?
Well, so I think that's the protection nowadays that you didn't have in 08 or 09. Someone could feel like, hey, they're just kind of figuring it out. We have this model that's like nail it and scale it, right? We want to nail something, and then scaling it's easy if you know where it's going. But a lot of companies are trying to figure that out, kind of build cars that go, which makes it really tough. But if you have a long enough runway, the thought is if you're a bright enough entrepreneur, you're going to figure it out. And I tend to agree with that to some point.
Yeah.
But if you could have it the other way, which is how I prefer to have it, where you have a long enough runway and you figured it out, then it gets really fun. So in 08, 09, where all of our competition, mind you, I was looking up in 05 at competitors who had all merged together. They raised $30 million. I'm sitting in a basement. They're selling a cheaper product than me that's better.
Yep.
That was tough, right? I was like, man, that's going to be a hard one to overcome. But, we just did it. And nothing was better when that company Fire sold a couple of years ago for $70 million, right?
Yep.
To see them in the rearview mirror. But the best part of it was when the downturn happened, everyone kind of retreated. And we went to heavy hiring and development mode because our model was sound. And we came out of 2010 5 years ahead.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the part of these cycles that people understand. You just don't want to be effective. So like when we do our growth, I mean, if you look, we hired 500 people in 1 year. We hired 180 people last quarter. And these aren't $12 an hour employees, right? And it's the same talent board that you're all in. And we were cash flow positive last quarter.
Yeah.
For every quarter in the history of Paul's, we've been cash flow positive. So I think there's something about that where it might take a little longer, but I want to be able to write my own story as an entrepreneur. I don't want anyone writing that for me.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's why I do what I do.
It's a good, if you talk to any of the senior folks at Salesforce that have been around for a few years, they'll tell you the biggest mistake was not investing enough in 08 or 9, right? This is Salesforce is pretty good SaaS company. It's number one, right? And it sounds like even in those days, you had structured Qualtrics such that cash reach wasn't, cash is always stressful until it isn't, right? It inherently is, but you never had runway issues. You never worried you're going to run out of money in 14 months, at least once in those years, right? Or how do you, because in SaaS, especially when you have a sales-driven model, it does consume a certain amount of cash, right? So any insights into runway and stress around that until, now doesn't matter. For cash flow positive, you've raised hundreds of millions of dollars, right? But you didn't even raise any money until when? 2010?
Yeah, 2012.
That's a decade in.
Right, so Qualtrics is a story of two models. So mind you, my father wouldn't let me raise capital, so I said, hey, the only chance I'm ever going to take a dime out of this company is to be extremely profitable.
Yes.
So at the time we raised money, we had, I think, 48 million in sales, kicking off 30 million in cash.
Kicking off 30 million, yeah.
With no outside funding.
Wow.
And then I was sitting there one day going, hey, wait a minute, we're on to something.
Yeah.
And I would like clear out the checking account every month. I would pay people $8 million a month to stay away. And we were sitting there going, wait a minute, this is a multi-billion-dollar platform we're working on. Yeah. What if we took all of that money and put it back in? Yeah. And I know that sounds like, well, duh. But when you're taking home that much money, that's not how you think. And so then it became, well, how do we do this in a responsible way, but still maintain that scrappy bootstrap culture that we grew up with? So that's been the challenge now, is we are accelerating as fast as we can. The interesting thing is so is everyone else in the world.
Yeah.
But I don't think we're doing it in a way that we're going to have to stop.
So let me come back. There's a lot of things I want to talk about. You raised a really interesting point. Something I thought a lot about, especially the last couple of years I worked with more companies. So back then you were doing, get a $48 million run rate, and you were dropping $30 million to the bottom line, right? So what are your Zen thoughts on capital efficiency in SaaS? We look at Box, and I think Box is an amazing company with an amazing CEO in the most competitive space in the world, with really tough unit economics, right? And we've just heard really an amazing set of metrics, right?
Yeah.
What's the Zen learning? What's the difference between you and Box, right? Or or Salesforce is in the middle. Salesforce is generating free cash flow, but never quite at the numbers that you did. And it's not as simple as the fact that your product is doing higher margin, gross margin than those, right? What's your Zen learnings on capital efficiency?
So I think Box is doing a great job for what they're doing. You know, I used to always say, you know, Aaron, I wish I was picking a fight against someone who was like one of these big players. It'd be so much fun, right?
Yes.
That was kind of how we grew up, right? But now it's kind of like we're in uncharted territory in our space, and you know, a lot of people are trying to pick a fight with me. And so, but he's not going to tiptoe into the market he's in. He's not going to tiptoe in and all of a sudden, like, strategically, like, get in there. It's like, oh, Microsoft, hey. No, he's got to come in there full frontal. So in that market, I think he's doing exactly what he should be doing.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. In markets where you're creating a market or you're doing something that might not have as long of a leash, that's what you got to do. If you've got one where you can create something, I think you've got a little more chance. But I think they're doing a great job, and I've actually looked at their enterprise model, and I think that's exactly how I would go about it.
So one factor, and these are the things I've tried to learn and think about. One factor is creating the market, right? It's harder, right?
It's harder.
It took
It takes
10
longer.
years to do it, right?
People are right. I mean,
Really
I've been pounding our market and everything we're doing since 2004. And now people are finally starting to go, yeah, I see what you're talking about. It's like,
The only advantage I can see to creating a market is that there's less competition, right? In this segment of the market, you had a lot of, if you create a market, it's minute, it's tiny, right? And so when I think about capital efficiency, the second factor I look at is the actual competitive, like deal by deal, not theoretical competitors, but deal by deal, right? And so in competition is something we all we obsess about as founders, right? And sometimes to our detriment. So tell us about competition, how it's changed, and how that impacted your growth up until your 30 million free cash flow, and then these last few years as you've exploded.
So when you're bootstrapped, you can't really look at the competition and copy what they're doing, or you're already dead.
Yeah.
Right? So I think the best thing that we've done by kind of trying to maintain that culture is, if I look at Qualtrics, it's a series of 6 startups, right? And I think that, you know, if I was looking to go join a company or I was looking to invest in a company, everything would be about innovation. Does this company have the ability to innovate for the second and the third and the fourth act?
Yes.
Because you might get super lucky where your first act is this huge market, but every company I see, now that they're public or they've grown and they're big, they could even be at a $20 or $30 million or $30 billion market cap. They're saying, what's next?
Yeah.
And the reality is it's hard to innovate, and it takes a long time, and it takes a lot longer than you thought. So I think in Qualtrics, we're really, historically we've been pretty good at innovating because we didn't have another option. And so my big proponent for scarcity and to bootstrap for most of these startups is you're going to need that muscle memory and scar tissue down the road, and if you don't have it, it's like cramming for a marathon. You're only going to get to mile mark 7 before you just fall over.
And you think that, and you did start in 02, which was the crappiest of all time of the internet, right? Luckily you were a junior in college, so you didn't know any better, right? So do you think, how do you bear that advice in 2015 when you come out of Y Combinator at 22 and you can be doing 10 million in revenue within 18 months? Does it change that advice you give on that, the discipline of that efficiency? Because you were lucky, you had years to do it in the depths between 1.0 and 2.0, right?
I think it really depends on the space. Back to the Box example versus us. But and then there's really, go back to that nail it and scale it principle, right? It's like if you're trying to scale something you haven't nailed, then that doesn't work. But if you've got a model that you have nailed and you're going after a land grab, and you've got to acquire that market share, go. And if it works, so like in the academic market, once we got to 250 schools, it was probably well baked at about 40. But once we got to 250, it's like, let's go. I'll give you another great example. When our investors first came in 2012, I didn't want to go and once again, I was trying to be super profitable, so I didn't want to go over to Europe. So I had a team coming in at night selling into Europe. Right.
Which was 2012.
In 2012.
You raised 9 figures of capital.
Well, right about that. Yeah, they were trying to get me to go over. It was like this huge vow, right? I didn't want to go over.
You did it too late, didn't you?
Well, no, I didn't know it. But they were doing about $400,000 a quarter over the phone.
Yeah.
I was like, this model's beautiful. So and then it's like, no, we need $3 million, Ryan. We got to go fix that bet and open up our Dublin office. And now we have 100 employees in Dublin.
Yeah.
And it's the right move, but it's definitely a different model. And the one thing I see nowadays is the model that got you here is not going to be the model that gets you to the next place.
Yeah.
And you've got to get really comfortable tearing that down. You've got to get very, very comfortable reinventing that model. I'll give you a great example on the sales side, to go to market, because I'm pretty passionate about this. My head of sales was coming up to Dreamforce. He had 400 emails in his inbox of someone trying to sell him something. Right? So that didn't happen in 2009, right? And especially not in 2006. There weren't that many planes on the tarmac when we were 8. Yeah, there were like 8 emails, and you kind of see. Right now, it's cat. So what are you going to do, and what are you going to do for the future to differentiate yourself as a company? Yeah. So that's the part that people haven't thought through. Everyone's got a bunch of engineers that are super smart and a bunch of money. Yeah. Well, we can all build anything.
Any software can do anyone can build
anything, especially if I got a model to look at, right?
Including at Microsoft, Adobe, any big company. They have good engineers everywhere, right?
Excuse, right? They have a lot of money and super smart people, right? Super smart people. Everything's going to be coming around go-to-market. So you cannot just be a good product company anymore. You have to be a good product company and an amazing go-to-market company. And together you have a chance to do something big. And people don't spend enough time on that side.
Yeah, let's go back and touch on some things that I find pretty interesting. Let's talk about the viral coefficient in B2B SaaS. So you talked about you start at university, and then you have some students, and then they go off, and they bring it to another university, they bring it to I calculated our viral coefficient of SaaS I'm not a statistician, not that good, but at about 8 months. It took about 8 months for that process to yield another paying customer. Do you calculate that? Because we get impatient, right?
Yeah.
And this isn't Instagram. It takes time, right? So how does that virality work? How do you think about it?
So first of all, I think if you think about, this is interesting because I actually think the go-to market in the enterprise is slowly changing. The way we buy is changing. So I'll give you a great example. Someone wanted to sell Tableau to Qualtrics, right? And our head of eng was like, oh, we don't want more BI product, we're not doing that, right? And so our head of sales bought a $10,000 Tableau license. And then our head of finance bought a $10,000 Tableau license. And our head of marketing bought a $10,000 Tableau license. And I just bought a $300,000 Tableau license. So the way we buy, it's kind of this try before you buy. I don't remember the last time even a company in our situation just came in and bought a $400,000 license or something like that. So I think if you look at the Tableau, if you look at the Elastic, if you look at the Slack models on the way they're going into the enterprise, it's very, very different than the historic, enterprise sales rep with United, platinum miles showing up at your office. It doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
And actually, it's the opposite of that, where, I have a friend who's the CEO of one of these companies, and he's like, hey, Ryan, we're evaluating Qualtrics. And I was like, well, what's there to evaluate? We're buddies, I'll give you a great deal, let's close it. No, my team's got to do what they got. I'm like, come on, man, he's like, well, can you just have your team jump on our product? And it's like, no. If Vinny calls me and says, Ryan, I want you guys on Salesforce, and my head of sales doesn't want to use Salesforce, look, he's got his KPIs, his OKRs, and whatever he's shooting for, and I don't care how he gets there, just get there.
Yep.
And if I'm telling him what software to use, that's kind of what's going on now. And that's actually what happened in academia. So we started with these really prominent faculty members who actually drove the business decisions for all of the university.
Yeah, I wonder if that's really just as important as this. I want to talk about silos and try before you buy it. To me, it's more that the functional heads are making the buying decisions, right? And that sometimes it's the same as a silo, But you can still buy $1 million worth of Qualtrics right off the bat. I mean, you have customers that have bought all,
100%.
right?
But we're competing in some of these enterprise spaces, and there's like, oh, there's 300 RFPs going on in this enterprise space. We show up there, there's 5 other companies bidding there. The customer doesn't know, and the win-loss ratio is all over the place.
Yeah.
But what they don't realize is there was 4,000 RFPs that they never got invited to because it was our people who were already in there upselling throughout the process.
Yeah.
So they never even got a call on those.
So, but let's go back. So there's one thing, and when I do get work, one thing I worry is when we give binary Atlassian and Slack advice, right? Because everyone would love to build a product like Atlassian without a quote real sales team, which is sort of there, but not real. Or Slack, which truly up to at least 20-something million has no traditional sales team. But that's not quite the same as silos that expand. And more importantly, I'm not even sure that Qualtrics is totally binary, right? So you do these C-level sales, right? Where you go in, and in the beginning you will bring down to 6-figure and 7-figure deals. And then you do the Tableau type deals that are smaller, right, I think, and then close more of the company later, right? So is it really so binary?
No, I think we've got a great product.
Yeah.
So we're very comfortable having one department use our product, and then they start gathering data, getting insights, and they're like, whoa, this is easy. Let's use it for event feedback. Oh, great, this is awesome. Let's use it for our customer stat survey. Great, this is awesome. Let's use it for HR. And it spreads that way. If you don't have a viral product or a product that you think people won't tell other people about, then yeah, you better go slay the dragon once and lock them up in a 3-year deal because that's your only chance. But when the companies aren't ready to do that, it's a lot better to drop something off there, move on to the next, and work on how to navigate and let that grow, right? And the other part of this is some of these companies, and this is where founders don't think about a lot, where are you going to get your wallet share from? Yeah. So they think that, like in the Box situation, in the Box situation, what was the budgets 5 years ago for file sharing?
0. But
Zero.
ECM is real.
Yeah. So it's there.
Yeah.
But
it has to be from
but
ECM.
every company can't have. We're going to go create a bunch of discretionary spending.
Yeah.
You've got to, in our world, you can't raise your hand and say, "Hey, I'm on the consumer side. I'm going to the enterprise." You actually have to rip something out, change the old way of doing it,
yes,
or come in and like wrap it all together.
Discretionary is small.
Discretionary is small. The budget's
right?
there,
Yeah.
but who are we ripping and replacing?
Yeah. So what's the case with Qualtrics? What did you learn about that? What buckets did you come out of?
Yeah, so when we first started, we're like, hey, you can do more for less. This was the 2009, 2010. Your budgets just got cut. You can't outsource to the $30 billion market research industry. So do more for less there.
So you came out of this CMO's outsourced research budget?
Which is
it's a big piece of it. That's where you came from, right?
Yeah. And then you go in, and now we're taking, we're ripping out SuccessFactors and companies like that on the 360 review side, and then on the customer experience side, it's a really hot area, and people are kind of doing this for the first time. They're replacing call centers and all sorts of different programs, and then they're doing it all together on one enterprise platform.
Yeah.
So instead of 3 different products and a bunch of consultants, we're saying you guys own all the data. It's all here, and for the first time ever, you've got this insight platform that is going to be as equally as important as a CRM tool or an HRM tool like Workday.
Yeah.
And it connects with the whole org instead of just like HR or just sales. And
yeah.
So that's the success of Qualtrics is for me to show that to the world. Right?
I'll just share a little because I think that the wallet share, or it's such a misunderstood topic by founders. And I'll share when I was acquired and I was a VP at Adobe. We had a huge budget for our department, which is web services. My discretionary budget was $500,000 a year. So if you wanted to sell me something, first you had to get my attention as a VP.
Yeah.
But all the stuff that I was going to buy discretionary had to fit into $500,000. And so it exists, right? But if you want to go do something big, you have to mash into a category, right? Into a bucket and probably rip somebody out ultimately, right?
100%.
Or play with the changing budget, like just reallocation of CMO's money, but you're still ripping something out, even if it's humans, right? Some sort of human capital. So
yeah, and I think founders and tech folks sometimes think that, all right, I got this great product, I got a bunch of users, I'm going to go to the enterprise. Some head of sales is going to come in and take me through there, and this person on this white horse is just going to go get all of this. And it's like, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
I mean, if anyone's starting a company or they're starting to get into some of these problems, if you can't sell this yourself, probably no one else is going to be able to. If I can't walk in and grab your budget as a CEO, even if I'm not technical or salesy, that's not an excuse. Because no one else is going to be able to do that, and you can't understand the value prop.
Yeah.
And if you are in front of the customer with that budget, you're going to look at it and say, oh, wait a minute, I can't get that budget, but if our product changes a little bit, there's nothing better from an R&D standpoint or a product development standpoint than having those conversations. And everyone says, well, our customers want this, that's how we drive product development from customer requests. And for me, that's 50% of it. The other 50% is, will they request it and write me a $100,000 check?
And how, when you look back in the early days, those first couple hundred years, how good a salesperson were you? The junior, yeah.
I got us out of the basement. I
think, because my point is, I think 95 times out of 100 with SaaS vendors, we have to learn how to sell. Like, if we're bad at it, and maybe we're good at elephants, or maybe we're good at schmoozing, we're typically good middlers.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know how to totally open, and we definitely don't know how to nap or close in 60 seconds, but at least we're decent middlers, right?
Yeah. I remember being in Dallas, Texas, and operating out of the basement and closing Sabre and Travelocity for $75,000. And it was like, oh, like I took 2 weeks off. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to make 30 grand. My dad's going to put 5 in the pot. And I remember sitting in the airport going, do they know that first of all, I'm really young.
Yeah.
Second, that I'm in a basement.
But let's talk about that. This is another thing founders get wrong. I think that's and I think what they know is they're making a bet on innovation. And they're making a bet that this is a 7-year journey, but not a 7-week journey. And that you have something special. And I think they know the risk. And I think if you try and hide that, I'm sure you try to hide it a little bit because you hadn't even graduated, if you ever graduated. But
yeah, it got me really confident though. So our next project was with like the Federal Reserve, right? So we went out to the Army base and we were doing all these projects. And they're like, Mr. Smith, what's your hourly rate? I was like, well, it's $9 grand a day. $9 grand a day? That's expensive. Wow, expensive person. And we closed the deal and they paid me $9 grand a day, and that gave me enough fuel to like, hey, I'm worth $9,000 a day. And you can go, I'm on my way.
Yeah. So one bit of advice I give to founders, like in their first 18 months or so that are doing the enterprise, is I ask them what their biggest deal is, 10K, 20K, and I go say, go ask the customer for twice as much and learn, right? It's kind of, how did you challenge yourself to ask for 75K or 150K? How did you learn to do that?
Look, I think we're smart business people and good entrepreneurs, but I mean, if you would have told me 2002 that what I was working on would be at like the forefront of decision making today, like no one would have. I mean, we're pretty lucky, we're pretty fortunate. I think that's what people also don't understand is like everyone comes up, I did this, and this thing should have gone sideways 15 different times.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, and that's kind of what now, where we have all this optionality in front of us. What do you want to do? Do you want to go public? Do you want to do all these things? It's kind of like, okay, why are we here? How many families are we going to help? How many jobs are we going to create? How are we changing the world? And part of it goes back to, I did ask for that double amount. Someone paid us, right? And they didn't have to, right? I mean, they saw that young kid. You're probably right. Saying, hey, this guy needs a loan, right? And I mean, that happened all the time in payroll. And so I think that, I just think we're super fortunate to be as well.
Let's go back. So you sort of reinvented yourself 5 or 6 times, you said, right? Different phases. So I guess we all kind of do with the scale, right? Looking back over these phases over the last 13 years, what are were there key hires, whether they're right-hand people or like almost an ex post facto co-founder? Who made the company a different? Because this is a lot of time, right?
Yeah.
Just give us some titles or some anecdotes that move the needle for you.
So the hardest sell that I ever had to make is my father wouldn't let me take capital, and my servers were falling over. And I'm not like.
So this is 2003. So they're in the closet.
Well, yeah, they're in the closet.
There's no AWS.
The power would go out on the side of the house and shut us down for hours, and I
Yeah.
had to answer the phone and make something up. Must be on your end every correct.
DNS.
That was a constant line. But in 2009, I was like, I got to pay capital. I need to hire some real people to come help. And it was just going nowhere. So I finally said, okay, if I hired a venture capital firm, they partner, know what they do, they run out, they scour the market. I kind of fast forwarded through what they would do and who they would hire, and they would grab this great, HBS had a product, whatever it was. Then I said, who do I know that I can maybe convince to come back and work with me? And, I had this older brother who was running product at Google at the time. And he was running China, a huge percentage of the world's internet, and I called him up and I said, hey, you need to come back to Provo, Utah, and work with your younger brother. Leave Google, which was like, right.
You said with or for?
Well, you're for, right? And it took me 2 years, but I convinced my older brother to leave what he was doing and come work with me. And that was probably...
To run product, or what was it?
Just is, I mean,
COO?
I gave him, hey, we're founders, let's go, right?
Yeah.
And, it's kind of been yin and yang ever since.
So he became sort of like an ex post facto co-founder for you.
Yeah, and he was he was always an advisor to me, but that was a really tough sell. And, getting on to Jared, he's probably one of the most amazing product people in the world. And when you get, 2 or 3, I mean, there's only a handful of these people that exist.
Yeah.
And when they touch a product, they can turn it into $1 billion product. And, you saw that with Android and Android and all of that. And Jared's one of those people. And
it took you, the interesting part of the story, because I said it took you 2 years to recruit him, he's even your brother, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So if you're trying to
I threw everything out. I was like, you're the oldest sibling, the whole nation that you're supposed. I mean, like, this is your moral and family obligation. And it worked. And it's been it's been hard. I mean, the first year was crazy hard because we're exact opposites. Like, people can't even live from the same bloodline. Yeah. But it's actually been one of like the joys of my life to like be able. If you could do this, and you could be wildly successful, wouldn't it be cool to be able to do it with your brother?
And why? And I want to make sure we probably almost out of time. I want to get one other story, but what does he run today? You guys split some stuff up, or what's?
Right now he's running Engine.
He's running Engine. Okay.
Yeah.
So he's managing a third of the company.
Yeah, I mean, he runs a third of the company, but then we kind of split and work tandemly on different things. I mean, we play to each other's strengths, but we're thought partners, right? And that's what you all want out of your VCs as well as your investors. Is thought partners are really hard and really rare.
Really rare.
Not very many people. You don't get extra points for going alone, right? I think people don't realize that enough. So if there are thought partners that can really work with you, I mean, Jason, look at all your knowledge. Like, you would be so valuable to someone like me 5 years ago, or even now, who has gone through that. And if you see eye to eye, hold on to those people, because they're the ones that you're going to call. So Jared, more than anything, he's like that blanket that I've had since I was a little kid, right? And we've got good mojo together. Yeah. And you don't want to run that.
And I love that it took you 2 years to convince him, but it took him 7 years. I don't think it's ever too late for what I call this ex post facto co-founder, right? And it changes. I mean, now you got to think about how to get to $1 billion in revenue.
Yeah.
Right. You may need another guy like this.
Never say never.
You may need your.
You would have told me in 2011 I would have raised money. Yeah. 2012 I would have said you're crazy. I thought that was our only round we'd ever raised. Yeah. So we're never doing this.
But times got even better.
A year later. So I just stopped saying we won't.
And so one other, if there isn't, we can get one other thing in for it to wrap. One other game-changing hire that you made after your brother?
So actually, before my brother, I had a college roommate named Stuart Orwell who bet on doing this with me. It was just me and my dad, and Stuart joined us, and Stuart was, he worked for $8,000, $360,000 job offer to work for $8,000, and the next year he made $12,000. And
that's an odd negotiation. Yeah. I can't afford $9.
Yeah,
but I can do $600 a month.
And Stu is the most charismatic, happy person to be around in the world, and always positive. And I think if you look at partners, and Stu's been my partner, and he's still a founder, and he's on our board. And I think people look for who's the partner you want when things are going well, but Stu's the partner you want when the ship's sinking. And it was sinking along a lot of times, and Stu was right there just to pick it up.
10 p.m. you could sit
together.
100%. Without anybody else, right?
When I'm like this, I was just like steady Eddie, like we're gonna go kill it. And sometimes that's all you need. You need someone in there that's just got your back. And so Stu's been around. I mean, there's so many people along the way that have done this. There's so many people that will continue to do it. And so my job as CEO is to find those people that fit that DNA. And remove the roadblocks that's going to be in front of them to help take Qualtrics to what it's going to be.
There's one more thing I want to, can I have 60 more seconds?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just for the time. There's one thing, there's a lot of things, but we hit so many things, but when we talk about the team, I want to make sure we at least get one thing you and I chatted about on the phone, which is recruiting SaaS management outside of this glamorous Bay Area we're in. And you told me, because I work with companies from all around the world, and I do think it's a challenge outside of the Bay Area to get VPs, right? And you can get kids anywhere, right? And what you told me is you relocated a lot of people, right, to Utah. And it was hard enough to get your brother to come from Mountain View to Utah. So I think you agreed with me that it's hard, and the way you solved it was relocation. So just a minute or two insights on, VPs if you're not in this sort of echo chamber of Silicon Valley?
Yeah, so the benefit of Silicon Valley is success breeds success, right?
Yeah.
So you start with HP and Sun, and you go all the way back. And so we're always looking for the right DNA that's been created. And in Utah, it's such a young area where, you got WordPerfect and Omniture and Adobe.
Yeah.
But outside of that, there hasn't been a lot of success to breed success. And arguably some of those, some of the DNA in there might not always be good. Right?
Yeah, it's dated.
It's dated, right? And so what's exciting about Utah right now is there's probably 6 companies worth over $1 billion. There's 3 of them on our street, and 10 years down the road, it's going to be phenomenal.
Yeah, right? we're going to rip out, try and rip your whole team out for this.
So one of the things we're doing, is we're going around and we're saying, okay, where do we need those folks?
Yeah.
And then what % of the workforce can we grow our own? So we're in Utah, so we believe in growing a lot of the talent. But we need coaches. That's a real interesting pitch when you've got someone like yourself who's been around the SaaS world and say, hey, look, I've got 150, kids or young kids that we're growing between, this age and this is where they're at in their career. You want to come coach? That's a very different pitch than, hey, look, I need you to come out and manage a bunch of people that are going to be a pain in the ass. Like, these people want someone to manage them. They want help. They're looking for direction, and they're not these millennials that are just taking a 2-year tour of every single company like we
Or
saw.
a 366-day tour.
Yeah, 366-day tour. I want to acquire some Uber stock and this stock and just diversify my portfolio. so I think that. But then you look out here and you've got all these people that have that experience. So every market we go into, from Seattle to Utah to Dublin to Sydney, has something in the talent base that's special. And I think this fragmented work environment where you've got multiple offices, you can't scale anymore without it. And as much as no one likes it, we were 18 months ago, we were just in Provo, Utah, and now we have 6 offices. We've got engineering up in Seattle. We just opened up another sales center in Dallas. We've got DC. We've got Dublin. And everyone has something different. And then we take the puzzle pieces that they don't have and augment for that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the new strategy. But I think what we're seeing is no one has the exclusive on Smart View.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Ron, this was epic. Thank you very much.
I think I'm bound to follow up this area.